It's time for On Point with Julian Phillips.
Welcome to this latest edition of On Point. On Point can be for anybody. I know it's geared more towards the African American community, but anybody can watch it. And I have, a number of white subscribers, and I consider them very good friends as well. But I want to direct this message specifically towards Black folk today. And we're going to have a hard conversation, shall we? A few months ago, Joe Biden said in an interview, "You ain't black if you vote for Trump." And he got a lot of heat for that. And I can understand why, to a certain degree, because blacks are not monolithic. We all don't think the same. We don't all act the same. We all don't have the same experiences. And he got a lot of heat for that. But there was some truth to what he said. Why? If you separate Trump from the Republicans, here is a president for the first time in our country's history. And we've had other presidents that have been racist, like Woodrow Wilson, Nixon, perhaps others. But when pressed on the issue, he refused to denounce white supremacy. Refused. And a number of his backers refused as well. They danced around that issue. In Charlottesville, as you recall, he said there were good people on both sides. Really? Let's forget about the Central Park Five. That goes too far back for some people. But those of us who lived in New York, we know about that and how he basically bulldozed those boys into prison. Of course, they were acquitted later. He certainly did not apologize for that. While he was running for president the first time around in 2016, he continually accused and said that Barack Obama was not born in this country. And then, of course, right before, then he said, oh, well, he was born in America, and that's it. That was the end of it, okay? I don't know how anybody who's black, I don't care how much money they're making, I don't care how big their 401ks are, I don't care how much they're making in the stock market, can put their hat behind a man who refuses to denounce white supremacy. To me, that says something about you. There are all sorts of sacrifices that we as black people, or anybody, must make in order for them to have their own dignity and integrity. So for me, this is a no-brainer. 2020, November 3rd, this election is a no-brainer. Is Biden and Harris everything I'd want them to be? No. But to me, there's no choice. And that's why I say we as black people, this time around, for once in our lives, must hold the Democrats accountable. During the primaries, Congressman Jim Clyburn made an impassioned appeal to the folks of South Carolina that they must vote and back Biden. It was that appeal, that emotional appeal, that was a snowball effect that has put Biden in the position he is in today. What is he going to do for us, for people of color? But more importantly, it's not what he's going to do for us. It's how much we're going to force him to do things that he has promised with the agenda that he and Harris have put forward to make lives better for black folks, people of color. I mean, of course, all Americans, yes, but specifically for us. Too often over the years, our vote has been taken for granted. We vote Democrat blindly. I remember as a kid, my mother said, oh, go to the polls and just click the line, vote Democrat down the line. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, we did that. That's what we were told to do. That's what we believed we had to do. But what have we gotten for it? There's one thing, and I hate to say this, But Trump said something very interesting during the early part of this year. What have you got to lose? What have you got to lose if you vote Republican? Well, not that I don't think we should do it this time, but you look at our cities, okay? I can look at here in New York City and look at Brownsville in East New York. Been democratically controlled for decades. Black politicians at that, for the most part. You notice any difference there? Any marked difference? I think for most of the people who live there would probably say no. Let's go up to Harlem and look at the Harlem Economic Empowerment Zone. That was like under Charlie Rangel, I believe. What did that do? How many people actually got loans? I know I tried to open a restaurant up there and I really cried in front of that boy. I mean, literally cried tears. I need the money. Didn't get a thing. It may have done some good, but how much? You ask a lot of people, they'll say no. I think that if we held the Democrats accountable, they might have done more for us. But we don't do that. We vote, just like most people do. Most Americans, are not involved in our democratic system. And democracy is not a spectator sport. Let me say that again. Democracy is not a spectator sport. If you want things done, voting is just the first step. Being involved in your community, being involved as a community activist, say, like Barack Obama was, that makes a difference. That's how you get things done. You just don't vote and just turn off the switch. It doesn't happen. So we must hold them accountable. The other thing I want to talk about are certain Democrats, and I'm sure there are more than a few, that are very hypocritical if it doesn't involve their own interests. And I want to focus on one right now. He's Governor Andrew Cuomo of the state of New York. Yes, he's done a great job with the pandemic. He took the reins. Of course, a lot of people were bamboozled at the beginning, but he got it together. And I think he's done an incredible job. But let's talk about hypocrisy and racism. Governor Cuomo was in the forefront with a lot of people who are talking about removing symbols of hate in this country, namely Confederate flags and statues of Confederate generals, and removing the names of Confederate generals from military bases like Fort Bragg and others. Right there in the forefront for that. But what about Christopher Columbus? Governor Cuomo is an Italian American. I'm a proud Italian American. But what about Christopher Columbus? Let's first get past the lie that many of us have been taught growing up, that Christopher Columbus discovered America. I grew up with that. Just like, the Indians were bad, and I've got American Indian blood in me, okay? We were taught these things, all right? So Christopher Columbus discovered America. Not true. Don't take my word for it. Look it up. Christopher Columbus landed in the Caribbean. Never made it to New York. Never made it to our shores. And what did he do when he was there? He enslaved the indigenous population in the islands that he went to. He brought some of them back, I guess to Spain or Italy, or wherever he came from. He brought influenza, smallpox, was known for being a brutal, brutal man, torturing citizens down there, the inhabitants. He's known for this. This is serious stuff. But yet and still, we have a day named after him. And what does Governor Andrew Cuomo say about this? This is what he said in June of this year, when, of course, Black Lives Matter and, symbols of hate are being torn down all across America. This is what he had to say about Christopher Columbus. And I quote, "I understand the feelings about Christopher Columbus and some of his acts which nobody would support. But the statue has come to represent, that statue being Christopher Columbus, has come to represent and signify appreciation for the Italian-American contributions to New York. For that reason, I support it." Really? Italian-American contributions to New York. What did Christopher Columbus have to do with any contributions to New York? He never came here. And then he goes on to say, and I'm going to repeat this, "I understand the feelings about Christopher Columbus and some of his acts, which nobody would support." Well, if you understood our feelings, you wouldn't support having the statue of Christopher Columbus up in Columbus Circle in New York City in the first place. You don't understand our feelings. Because if you did, you would understand that this is a despicable man. Now, let me say this. I love my Italian-American friends, sincerely so. And there are great examples of Italians and their contribution to mankind. Let's talk about Leonardo da Vinci. Let's talk about Galileo, Michelangelo. What about Enrico Fermi? What about Antonio Meucci? Some of these names you may not know. We're talking about great leaders, scientists, inventors, mathematicians. If you want to talk about New York, we could talk about Mother Cabrini. And she was canonized, I believe, by the Roman Catholic Church back in 1946. If you want to put somebody up there to represent contributions to this country, to the world and mankind, and New York, I can think of a bunch of people. But Christopher Columbus? So basically, when he said that, that was the end of it. And that's how a lot of people treat black folks. Well, we're going to say this and we're going to do this, and this is going to be the end of it. That's it. Oh, no. As James Brown said many years ago in a song, "It's a new day. Fellas, let me tell you what you got to do. TCB so mellow, nobody can get through." Let me tell you something. We have to TCB so mellow. That means take care of business and hold people accountable. See, I'm too old to have people just say what they feel they can say to me when they want to say it, how they want to say it, and I don't do anything about it. Oh, yes, no, Jesus said to turn the other cheek, but he realized we only had two cheeks. After you turned the second cheek, he knew what to do. He chased those money lenders out of the temple. That wasn't a peaceful deal. Jesus is my man because he knew what it's about. We have to get to the point now where we're not going to settle for anything other than the truth. No more lies. Christopher Columbus did not discover America. I can't support some of his acts and condone others. He is who he is. We have to get to the point where we have to filter out, separate the wheat from the tare and call it for what it is. And we have to hold people accountable. There are a lot of things that Biden and Harris are going to promise America and black people in this country in particular. We got to write them down. And we have to monitor this. And we have to hold them accountable. And we have to be vigilant. And I don't care if you're a single parent mother and you're struggling and this and that, because what I'm saying to you is nobody has our best interests at heart but ourselves. We have to get to that point where we can't look outside of ourselves to get what we want, or think just, all of a sudden by just pulling a lever and voting for the Democrats or whatever, that things are going to come our way. It's never worked that way for us. It's always been an uphill battle. Everything worthwhile is upstream. There were days when we as people of color, of black people, fought for what we want. We're vigilant. Let me give you one example, and I'm going to close right after this. Remember the Montgomery Bus Boycott, Martin Luther King? And that paved the way in part for the civil rights movement back in the 60s. Those folks were tired of sitting in the back of the bus. Tired of it. And I remember the civil rights leader, Fannie Lou Hamer, she said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. So what'd they do? They put together a boycott. Do you know how long that boycott lasted? Of black folks having to walk and carpool and sacrifice and be the subjects of ridicule and who knows how much violence? It took 381 days consecutive. We can't even go through a few months of being quarantined at home with our popcorn and beer and liquor and pig's feet, watching TV, and get all upset about this pandemic. Hasn't been a year yet. And we're in the situation we're in, not because of black folks, but for everybody not following all the rules. You know, wearing masks and stuff. But black folks, 381 days. That's conviction. That's determination. We need to go back to those days. We need to understand that without that determination and conviction, we're never going to get where we want. And we have to force America to their knees to let them know the Achilles heel of this country is racism. And until we confront that, until we force the powers that be to confront that, we will never be the great nation that we could be, that we should be. That's what we have to do. So go out there and vote. I'm not telling you to vote for him. I know who I think you should vote for. I don't think we have any choice. But for whoever you vote for, hold them accountable. And do not deal or accept hypocrisy. Do not accept anything less. We are now under 3 weeks before November 3rd. Some of you may have voted already. A lot haven't. All I'm saying is to vote. But outside of voting, hold these politicians accountable. Nobody has your best interest at heart as much as you do. We're going to be following this election. A lot's going to happen between now and November 3rd. Trust me on that. So stay on point and stay tuned to On Point. And we'll see you next week.